All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We've just been setting up the presentation here. It's taken an extra minute or two, but we're ready to roll with an updated presentation. We've got the Managing Director of the Critical Minerals Group, Mr. Scott Drelincourt, here today to give us a bit of a briefing about what the company's been up to since its very successful listing on the ASX recently, what's going on today, and what's coming up tomorrow. So I'm going to hand you over to Scott to walk through this, and we'll have a few questions at the end of the session. So over to you, Scott.
Cheers, thanks, Peter. I suppose the purpose of today is just to touch base with everyone, shareholders and investors and potential investors, and give everyone an update of what we've actually been doing in the 4 or so odd weeks since listing, which I think we've hit the ground running. So we'll walk through that and let's get into it. Standard disclosure, you can read that at your leisure later. Look, as mentioned previously to our previous investors and to our new investors, we are ESG focused. We want to be driving critical minerals to supplying battery minerals for the energy transition. We're very passionate about that. As a company ourselves, we currently have a significant resource at surface, 210 million tonnes at 0.39% V2O5. You can see that in our prospectus and other announcements as well. We're in an established mining region at Julia Creek. We have infrastructure through our project, being road and rail and power and nearby water. We have significant government incentives that will aid to the accelerated development of our project. We'll talk on that. Since listing, we've already got on the ground and we've already commenced our drilling program. We've got a 24 drill hole program already underway, and we're probably about 3/4 of the way through that at the moment. But what you've probably noticed there on the shareholders to the new investors and ones who haven't been able to keep up at the moment, we've been able to successfully partner with Idemitsu as our cornerstone investor. Idemitsu being a large Japanese mining giant who invest in traditional mining, solar, renewables, wind, etc. as well, and they're very passionate about the energy transition. We're very, very fortunate to have someone of their significant stature come on board our IPO as our significant strategic and cornerstone investor. The board starts with Alan Broome, Board of Australia, for his services to mining as our chair, myself, MD and geologist, Art Malone, non-executive director and engineer, and our very competent co-sec, Tony Myers, as well. For our flagship project, as you can see there, it's intersected by the road and rail of the Flinders Highway and the Great Northern Rail. It goes directly to the port of Townsville. Look, as I mentioned, we've already got a JORC resource and we're out there at the moment drilling that to increase the JORC resource, and we'll talk about that in a moment. We have the potential to also add to the resource high purity aluminium and molybdenum that's contained within the Toolbuck Formation. And as we've already mentioned again, it's shallow, as in it outcrops at surface. So in our resource, if we haven't hit our, in our model, we haven't hit our resource by 35 metres depth, we haven't considered it part of our resource. So we're keeping it nice and shallow. The resource itself is limited by contaminants compared to the hard rock guys. It's a much simpler process, and I'll do some discussions on that in a moment as well. So location, infrastructure, as mentioned, we have power, road, rail going through the port, water, directly to the port of Townsville. At the moment, our current flagship project, Lindfield, is 295 square kilometres. We've also recently put applications into the other 3 tenants you see there, Lara Downs, Lindfield North and Winmore, just to further give us more resource backing to support our flagship project, which is what we are focusing on. The Lindfield North is just an extension of a strike of our current resource. So what short-term activities, what's happened or what's happening? Drilling's already underway. We're doing 23 core holes, which are 4-inch core holes, so large diameter. One of those holes will be open chip hole, and we'll be converting 3 of those into water monitoring holes. And we're about 3/4 of the way through the program, and we have already done the 3 water monitoring holes as well. So we're just wrapping up that program and a few more holes to go. What happens on completion of that drill program? Well, we'll be sending all that core off to a lab to preparation for assays and metallurgical work. So immediately upon completion of drilling, that'll go to the lab for prep and be crushed up and sent off to multiple labs for assays as well, which will go into the resource model. We look forward to upgrading the JORC resource grade, category and size from this current program. But the bulk purpose of this drilling campaign is to supply large tonnage of material for metallurgical test work and pilot plant work. So on completion, most of that core will be crushed and sent to the Met Lab to commence immediately metallurgical work on our deposit. So we won't be sitting idly over the Christmas and summer period. We'll be working right through doing the metallurgical work, and that will commence in the coming weeks. Exploration, look, we already touched on, we'll try and incorporate into the model for our assays molybdenum and high purity aluminium and understand how that fits into our resource. And we've also just touched on with the other previous image there, that we've applied for 3 other tenements. Those tenements hold about 84 drill holes throughout those 3 tenements. And again, the resource outcrops at surface. So it just further supports our current flagship project that we'll be focusing our development on. So I want to touch on why our deposit is so unique or best placed to deliver vanadium to the market. It's really, it comes down to a few things. It's because it's so simple in geology, in deposition, and it's shallow. So the ore is soft and at surface. And when I say soft, it's oxidized, crumbles, you can crush it in your hand. So it won't require any drilling or blasting. It'll be free dig, no milling. So that's a significant time and cost saving just on surface mining operations already. What we envisage there. It has the depth advantage, which I just touched on, which will mean it'll have a low strip ratio and be very amenable to standard open cut mining methods and practices. Again, making it very favorable for economics there. The geology itself lends itself to an advantage for beneficiation compared to the hard rock as well. We already touched on that it's soft and therefore it's able to be crushed up easy and broken down into its smaller components easy. But what we also have is the geology itself being a seam-like deposit, not chasing an ore body down at depth. It's very homogeneous, very I suppose if you go a kilometre to the left or to the east or the west or north or south, the grade and thicknesses are very similar. So for the beneficiation process, we simply just crush it up and float off the waste material that we don't want and end up with a concentrate of the vanadium mass in the aluminum silicates, the clays, and the shale itself. And that's where we end up with the majority of the vanadium in approximately 20 to 40% of the mass. But that's the upside that this style of geology has over the hard rock guys. You can beneficiate the concentrate to a higher grade than the majority of the hard rock deposits. You can free dig it, no blasting, drilling, it's soft. So the advantages that has straight away is it makes the OPEX and CAPEX costs significantly lower, and which is a big advantage for us, mainly through the processing as well, being a lot more streamlined and simplified as well.
And Scott, if I can just jump in there, that section there shows obviously it's shallow. That means it's easier for you to deliver that pilot plant early stage met testing ore that you discussed.
Yeah. Well, I suppose you put it this way: if it wasn't at surface, which we've got outcrops and a couple of little quarries within our tenement as well, we can just go straight to. But if it wasn't at surface, you'd be having to dig a 30, 40 plus metre deep trench just to get that bulk material to feed through a pilot plant or a demonstration plant. So for us, we can just scrape the surface. That makes the process, approval, the time and the cost a lot more simplified and quicker as well. So yeah, having it surface and oxidized and soft is a big, big bonus. So what we envisage the bulk end use for our resource is for the battery market, particularly the vanadium battery market, redox flow battery market. Look, vanadium redox flow batteries are poised to play a significant role in large-scale energy duration, right down from residential all the way up through grid-scale energy storage. At the moment, it has a superior life of 30-odd years, being 30 years because that's how old the technology is. Some of the batteries that are sitting around that age are still running at 99% efficiency. It can hold a charge for much longer periods than its peers. It can charge and discharge at the same time compared to its peers. It can fully discharge compared to its peers, and it does not catch on fire. Really, really important points there. It has no toxicity to it. It's highly recyclable. 30 years at the end of its life, you can pull the vanadium out and reuse it for another purpose, or just re-purify it and keep the battery going. So very highly reusable and recyclable. Vanadium manufacturers are actively seeking supply unsuccessfully at the moment, as in the demand for vanadium high purity V2O5 to go into batteries is already outstripping the supply. And we're only just starting this energy transition. So we're having a lot of optimism for where the market's really going to go. Put it in a bit of perspective, one of the largest vanadium flow batteries recently come online in Dalian, China. The first phase of it is just 100 megawatts at 400 megawatt hours, and that's going to be scaled up this year, double to 200 megawatts at 800 megawatt hours. Now, to put that in perspective, that 800 megawatt hour battery system will hold approximately 9,000 tons of V2O5. Now, if we're going to be running if we're going to run a mine at 2 million tons run of mine per annum, that's going to produce about 6,000 tons approximately of V2O5. So that one battery system would have about a year and a half of V2O5 production from one mine site for one battery system. So there is a lot of opportunity for vanadium flow batteries globally across multiple.
And Scott, globally there's a demand, but Queensland government seems to have recognised that future demand and are setting up infrastructure already, which is going to assist you, and you're already involved in those discussions. That's
right. So I think there's a few reasons the Queensland government's supported. I can't speak to all of them exactly, but look, Queensland has some good vanadium deposits. Looking at ours, we've got one of the higher grades of vanadium in the region and at surface with the infrastructure in place. So there's a lot of vanadium in Queensland. Processing itself is not complex. As we talked about the geological comparisons between hard rock and soft rock, why this style of geology is superior to the hard rock for extraction and cost, the processing itself is known technology. We're talking flotation units, acid leaching and solvent extraction. So all pretty much off the shelf technology. So really simple to go forward there as well. So it really gives a good, strong business case for the Queensland government to invest and support the new critical minerals, and particularly why their focus is on vanadium. So we're very fortunate to have their support federally and through the state as well, through the pilot plant federally and through the demonstration plant through the state, which we'll touch on in a moment as well. But as you can see, the forecast here on the graphs for vanadium batteries themselves and what the forecast is quite compelling. That had an average forecast of about 40% year-on-year compound growth to 2031, and that's sourced from the Guidehouse white paper. There's a link. There's the reference to it down below. So even though predominantly vanadium goes into the steel market, it's used to strengthen and lighten steel. It's a greener product. So it's used in rebar, it's used in alloying, it's used in aeroplanes, etc. in high-tech industry. We believe and see the biggest growth and the biggest market is going to be in the vanadium flow battery space. And we're very fortunate to have the Queensland and Australian government supporting us in our industry, and we want to be able to take this all the way globally as well. So the current development timeline, as mentioned, we're drilling for JORC and bulk sampling at the moment. And we're about 3/4 of the way through that program now. So hopefully finish that in a few weeks and samples off to the lab for prep for assaying and metallurgical preparation. So as soon as those samples are prepped, they'll be going off to multiple labs for assay and another lab for the metallurgical test work to commence immediately. From that, we'll be feeding that into the pilot plant, and then on completion of that, those results from the assay and the JORC, and we'll be looking to complete a scoping study as well. So we've hit the ground running since listing. We've got new ground. We're really accelerating into our flagship project. We're getting those bulk tonnage of samples now for the metallurgical work, and we're going to be upgrading our resource grade category as well. So 4 weeks in, and what are we? Yeah, 4 weeks in today, and we've already accomplished quite a lot. So I look forward to continuing to deliver to the market and to our shareholders advanced of what we say we're going to do, and keep delivering. So you touched on before, Peter, these tailwinds and support. So I'll just quickly touch on those again. And on this presentation, if you click on these links where it says click here for more info, you'll have the original state or federal government announcements tied to those comments. So vanadium processing pilot plant, $1.265 million pilot plant, fully funded by the federal government, is being built and should be coming online very shortly in Brisbane Met Labs in Brisbane, and that's where we'll be running our metallurgical work and pilot plant through. The Queensland government has committed a $10 million investment into a vanadium, much larger scale than a pilot plant, a vanadium demonstration plant at the Port of Townsville, or in Townsville. So we'll be running bulk and material through that when that comes online next year. And the goal of that is to be able to produce, at the pilot plant, we'll be looking to produce vanadium and electrolyte, what it may be. But the demonstration plant will allow us to produce that in bulk, where we can, from that, say this is now scalable to a mine site, and we can try and lock in binding offtakes. So that's probably a good, another ties in with how the government's supporting the development of the energy transition and critical minerals, by trying to accelerate the market development of these critical minerals. And their focus here is obviously on vanadium. The National Battery Testing Centre, which we're partners of, has received a $15 million recent grant, totaling project value now being $50 million. And we'll be supplying those guys with vanadium and vanadium precursors to standardise, test and approve our vanadium for battery to be used in batteries as well. So great to be partners with those guys as well. So that sort of ties the upstream down to the downstream for us. And we'll look into this as well. But at the moment, the Albanese government has also committed $100 million to battery manufacturing in Queensland as well. So we've got the whole upstream and downstream support from state and federal government here, and we look to be part of all those, contribute to all those parts of the supply chain. So that's the quick rush through. Sorry, guys, if I rushed through some of that. But I'll welcome any questions you have. Please type them in, and Peter will bring them to me in the moment. I'll try and answer them live now.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for the update. I think that photograph of the drill rig on site had some special guests. Oh, can you tell us about the visit you had from your major shareholder?
Yeah, so we've got here, we've got myself in the blue, looking a little bit rotund. We've got Tom, the managing nickname Tom, managing director of Idemitsu Australia. Billy, deputy managing director of Idemitsu Australia, and Conrad, principal engineer from Idemitsu Australia. They came out to site within the first few days. We had already completed 3 drill holes. Went and showed them the project, the site, the cores, the drill rig, the quarry, which you can therefore see the core lined up with the outcrop and see the lithology and how it looks in comparison there and how it would be potentially mined. All the infrastructure in place there, and ran them through the whole project. And I believe we left them extremely satisfied with that result. Yeah, so really, really good to have them out at the start of the program, show them what we're doing. And yeah, very, very pleased with the results.
And Scott, not just good to have them there, but it's we do help in a lot of IPOs here at NWR. It's very, very rare that you see a major come into a junior at such a level. Having said that, Critical Minerals Group has come to the market as a well advanced project and company with already a resource and you're quite a way down the chain to development on the development pathway already. What is it about the project and the commodity that Idemitsu was attracted to?
Well, I think, like I was touching on earlier, the project and the commodity, Idemitsu themselves are looking at critical minerals and the energy transition and wanting to be investing in every part of that. They're already investing in renewables such as solar and batteries and wind as well at the moment. So we fit in with their strategic development pathway. But what attracts them, I believe, to our project is the simplicity of it. We've got a really good deposit at surface with infrastructure in place. We've got a really significant development pathway to get this thing in construction ready. We've got the right team on board with the right values who know how to deliver this. And that's probably key as well, the values and the team of experience we have on the board and myself to deliver this to a mine-ready project. So they're probably the first things off the top of my head that why Idemitsu came on board. The project stacks up quite well, fits in with the energy transition and what they're trying to deliver.
And Scott, with that sort of
complex as well.
With that sort of investment, will Idemitsu seek representation on the board as well?
There was an announcement put on a few days ago for our AGM, and Idemitsu Australia, their current Chief Executive Officer, Steve Kovac, has been nominated to as a non-executive director for voting on our current AGM. So you're right, they've sought representation at our current AGM coming up on the 24th of November. And my personal opinion, I would very strongly support that. I think they'd bring a lot of value strategically to the company and they'll add a huge amount of value.
Scotty, a really unique situation for a junior resources company today. It's really, really good to see. I've got a question here on the mineralisation style. Is the vanadium more of a disseminated mineralisation that is consistent across the geology, or is it more like gold? It can be lumpy. It can be in different grades throughout the mineralisation.
No, really, really good question. I wouldn't use the word disseminated, but yes, the same application would be there. I would use the word homogeneous, as same. It is evenly spread throughout the deposit. So what you have, it was a shallow sea, 100-odd million years ago, and with that it had the organisms were pulling the vanadium out of the seawater into themselves, and when they died in the deposit, they died when they died and sunk. They had layers of shale, limestone, and it's those clay-rich and shale layers which contain the vanadium. So it's evenly spread across kilometres and kilometres. The grade and thickness are very, very, very comparable. You're going to see very, very little variation in grade and thickness across kilometres of the deposit. So mineralogy speaking, it's very simple.
Yep.
And look at it as a bulk commodity in that sense.
Which leads to the next question. As you move towards a pre-feasibility study, I would assume then, given the homogeneous nature of the ore body, you don't need to do, very tight space drilling. You can probably expand the resource a bit further or bring it up to a higher level through more limited drilling. And how long would it take you to get to PFS?
Well, they're two good questions. But first point of the question about the drill spacing, we currently use independent geologists, so our hands are off, so we have that distance between us to sign off in our JORC resources and etc. And I'm happy to continue that way, so we come across as that quite conservative and everything's an upside. But the way that'll be defined is through geostats. If we can show that the got a hole A, and half a kilometre away you've got hole B, and you do that multiple times, and there's very little variation in grade, thickness, etc. It's very consistent. Then that will give us the allowance to tighten those drill spacings and to go from inferred to indicated easier. And when we get the metallurgical work done, go from indicated to measured easier because of the homogeneous nature of the deposit. So you're right there. Second part of the question, you're referring to the PFS. Well, look, I think we've already hit the ground running pretty hard already. That metallurgical work will commence this year. We'll be looking to then feed all that metallurgical work straight into the pilot plant as well. And it's on completion of that work that will assess our current position and see if we can accelerate above our previous timeline of the PFS. But in the prospectus, we said we'd have all this done and dusted up, pilot plant work, scoping work done in the first 2 years. And at the moment, we're well on track to complete that. So that's where we're heading.
Okay. The vanadium market, is it spot-based, contract priced, and how do you see the delivery of this project in timing-wise in terms of other competitors coming onto the market? Okay,
so the price itself, it's either a European or China price. It sits around about, I haven't checked it for the last probably 3 or 4 days, but it sits approximately around $10 a pound for V2O5 at 98%. So that's vanadium pentoxide in powder or flake form. But when you get that into an electrolyte form, that's a higher value. That's a negotiable price you can set. So you can choose to do spot pricing, as I mentioned, at $10 a pound for V2O5, or you can lock in longer term contracts. That's how you want to set that up. But the higher value is in the electrolyte. So whether you produce that domestically or internationally as well, that's another opportunity for us as well to get a higher end product. Your second point of the question, I believe, Peter, was around first mover to the market.
Yeah, something around that. I mean, we saw the graph before about the forecast demand, and do we think that there's room enough there for the players who are currently out there?
Oh, I think there's significant room. I think if everyone who's claiming to be a vanadium player now came online, we'd probably just fit the market. I think there's a lot of capacity, and that's where we are today. When you bring the forecasting into these conversations, then you're still going to need more vanadium projects to come online and deliver the batteries in the steel market and the other green alloy markets as well. So there's a lot of space for our peers and competitors to come alongside us or come behind us and follow us and do what we do. More power to them. I wish everyone all the best in working and driving this energy transition, to be honest. So there's a lot of space for everyone.
Thanks, Scott. I think that you've pretty much covered all the questions here today, and we look forward to news coming up soon, and we'll look forward to hearing you back here again for your shareholders and other interested investors into Critical Minerals Group.
Cheers, Peter, and thanks everyone who jumped online or who's watching the recording. We'll try and keep up our investors and shareholders up to date, and let everyone know that we're transparent. And if you have any questions, shoot them through to our email or directly to Peter himself, and we'll get back to you and address those anytime. So thanks for your time, everyone, and Peter.
Thank you, Scott.
Cheers.